Now I wish I had some rackets to break up here to get the energy going. All right, thanks for having me, folks. This day has been full of incredible content, lots of amazing tactical stuff. And so I think for my presentation, I wanted to zoom out a little bit because we are all living in one of the most exciting but fast-changing times in AI. And when that's happening, there's a lot of things happening at the strategic level as well as the tactical level. And so today I want to talk a little bit about what I call the next major distribution shift. And to start off, this quote from Alex Rampel, who's a VC at Andreessen Horowitz, I think encapsulated perfectly, which is the battle between every startup and incumbent comes down to whether the startup gets distribution before the incumbent gets innovation. And what he's really trying to capture here is, I think, this concept of escape velocity. If you're in an early stage startup, what we're all fighting for is escape velocity, basically escaping that gravitational pull from the existing habits that our customers have with all of the incumbents, right? So that we can reach totally new levels before the incumbents draw everybody back in. The thing about escape velocity is that in most parts, it's actually getting harder with AI, but in certain little slivers, it's actually getting a bit easier. And the reason it's getting harder is if you think about it from two ends of the spectrum, on one end of the spectrum, AI is making it easier and easier and easier to build stuff, which means, right, the incumbents can leverage that to build new competing products much faster, right, shortening the window. But there's also more and more startups in every single category with YC pumping out 4 or 5 of them every single cohort multiple times per year. And on the other end of the spectrum, what we have with AI is that most of the distribution channels that we have been tapping into for the past 5 or 10 years are also closing down. A lot of the social channels have really been constricting, sending traffic off-site. We now have SEO, one of the most reliable, largest channels of the past 20 years in this declining moment. And so we have both of these forces happening on both ends of the spectrum, and that's what I call the big squeeze. And so what is actually happening is AI has been this technology shift without a distribution shift so far. So what do I mean by that? Casey Winters, he was the chief product officer at Eventbrite. He worked on growth at Pinterest, Grubhub, a bunch of iconic companies, wrote this excellent blog post 2 years ago, where he said, what I realized having gone through the internet and mobile platform shifts is that technological and distribution shifts did not happen at the same time. Platform shifts that create both technological and distribution opportunities happen in a sequence, not all at once. So he wrote this 2 years ago and basically said that the distribution shift happens about 2 to 3 years after. Well, guess what? We're in that moment. We're in that window, and I firmly believe that we are about to see a major distribution shift. And what I mean by that is that when we get a technology shift, what happens with us and all of our customers is that our habits, are the places that we start to spend time, all of a sudden change. And marketing, go-to-market, really comes down to 2 simple things. 1, understand where our customers are spending time, and 2, figure out a way to participate in those places by either building content or products for it, buying or partnering. That's it. That's our job, right? So if number 1 is massively changing, that means we're in for a pretty big change. And when these distribution shifts happen, they go through the same cycle every single time. And I'm going to show a bunch of examples of this, but just to explain the cycle that they go through is there's actually a step 0 here, which is a new category emerges where we start to spend all of our time, whether that's social, mobile, other types of products. And there's typically 5, 6, 7 huge players investing tons of resources into winning that category because there's consensus that that is a major new category where we're going to be spending a bunch of time. Which then, 2, leads to step 1, which is somebody out of those 5 to 6 players identifies the moat, the thing that is going to help them get escape velocity from all of the other competitors, which leads to step 2. They open the gates. They either try to attract a bunch of people to come participate on the platform through content, through applications, or maybe agents in this shift, right? Because that brings users, that brings usage. It brings them more of the moat to help them get escape velocity. But then, eventually, every single time, we get to step 3. they start to change the rules and close down to monetize and continue to grow their business. Now, this cycle presents incredible opportunities, but incredible risks at the same time. And so you need to understand how the cycle plays out, what the rules of the game are, so that you can play them as well. But first, let's go through a few examples of history to show this cycle playing out. Let's think about social. When social emerged, Facebook was not the biggest player at the first. MySpace, Orkut, Friendster, a bunch of international players, they were actually much, much bigger. Facebook comes onto the scene. They were first to really identify the moat around the social graph. They launched the app developer platform. They made the social contract. They said, hey, app developers, I'm going to give you this space. You can put anything you want in it, and I'm going to give you all of these amazing viral social channels to get distribution. So what happened? A bunch of app folks, game developers came on. They brought more users, more usage with it over time. And then eventually, what did Facebook do? They started closing it for control, right? They started to say, actually, we want a piece of that action that's happening within that canvas that we gave you. They started taking a percentage of fees, more advertising, and eventually they just absorbed the most popular apps into first-party applications on their platform and essentially shut the platform down. Now this played out again in mobile, right? More apps leads to more iPhone users, which really starts to become a moat. They launched an app development platform. They established some initial rules. Those rules started to change, become more restrictive over time to prevent their own disruption, and we're kind of in that mode with them again. Same thing on LinkedIn. Many of you have probably experienced this very recently, because I certainly have as an individual content creator. They first did it with company pages and are now doing it with individual influencer pages, where they need more and more data, right, to resell it through their sales, their marketing, their ad tools. To get more data, they need more engagement. To get more engagement, they need more and more content. So what did they do? In their feed, they started really boosting content, influencers. They created this top voice program, all of these things. But then what happened recently? They started introducing mechanisms to monetize those things through things like thought leadership ads. And earlier this year, they made a big algorithm change that really suppressed a lot of the organic distribution to start to push people towards using those ads to monetizing. So look, this happens over and over and over again. I could give 10 more examples, both big and small. The point is that the cycle always repeats itself. So the question becomes, what is the next major distribution platform with this technology shift? Now, before I tell you my prediction, I first want to say that my prediction actually does not matter whatsoever. The important thing is that you know the cycle and you know how to navigate it, right? Because you need to make your own bets for your own users and your own audience. My prediction is not guaranteed by any means. Second thing, the timeline of the cycle is unpredictable. But if you look at history, every time it plays out, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, which means everybody needs to move faster. And the third thing is that there is a massive opportunity in these distribution shifts, but incredible risks as well. Meaning there's going to be amazing wins and also really tragic losses. And that is part of the cycle. My prediction, to no surprise, is I think the next major distribution platform is ChatGPT. Now, when I say this, half of the people are like, yeah, no, like obvious, right? And the other half usually argue with me vehemently about how no way that's going to be the case. Google's going to come in with all their distribution, all of their context. They're going to win. Facebook has all of this distribution, all of these things. It is not a consensus bet right now. But the thing is we are clearly at step zero, right? 5 to 6 major players investing a ton of resources to win this new interaction point, this new place that our customers are going to form new habits and spend a lot of time. Now, this is playing out in 2 modes. One, ChatGPT search. That is already happening with answer engine optimization, and I'm sure all of you are probably thinking about that. But the one that is still to come, that I think will still come, is some form of application or agent platform on one of these experiences. And that is going to be a big change and a big shift. And so when this happens, my prediction, of course, is that it's going to follow the exact same cycle, One is that ChatGPT and OpenAI, they have identified the moat. They were the first ones to it, which was about storing context and memory, right? What do they need to get more of your context and memory onto your platform? Well, they need you to be using more applications from ChatGPT in order to give you a reason to store more of that context and memory. But third is, over time, more than likely, not more than likely, definitely, they will at some point close for control. That could be through a platform fee, preferred placement, platforms, I don't know. I'm not sure, right? But it will come. And so the goal is how do you take advantage of whatever is to come next, the open phase, right? And make sure that you plan your exit for the close phase. There's a couple more reasons why I think ChatGPT will be the winner, which is if you look at history, it is never the biggest scale that wins. It is always retention and engagement that has predicted category winners. And all of the data is showing that ChatGPT is winning on this front. That top retention curve is ChatGPT. It's clearly significantly better than most of the players in the space. In addition, their retention curves are shifting up over time, meaning they're getting better and better, and they're showing the smile curve. If any of you have ever read anything on Reforge, you will recognize this pattern, how rare it is. Other folks that have experienced this are all of your major big winners like Facebook and others. And third is that of the users that they're retaining, they have the highest engagement. People are spending way more time on ChatGPT than any other platform. So, okay, knowing all of this, the question becomes, what do you do? How do you play the game? Well, guess what? When it comes to these distribution shifts, there is no opting out. That is the first reaction to everybody. It's like, I know how this ends. I'm not going to waste my time. Why would I help play this game, right? But there is no opting out of this game. And that's because we are all living in a prisoner's dilemma. Everyone knows how the game ends, but everyone still has to play. The reasons are, if you don't play the game, your competitors will. And letting competitors claim the early advantage in these distribution shifts is 10 times worse than actually playing the game and trying to navigate it. Number two is that no matter what you do, your customer expectations are changing, with or without you. Your competitors don't even need to participate. But if your users are spending more time on these platforms and getting used to new behaviors and new interactions from other applications that they're using, they will expect you to have that in the same exact way. So you need to adapt to your customer expectations. And number three is that the distribution platform, it's not your friend, but they're not the enemy either. This is not evil. It's just a force of nature. It's a part of doing business. So you can either surf the wave or get crushed by it, but you cannot stop it from coming. So as a result, you need a betting strategy. You need to know how to evaluate these platforms, think about how you're going to take a bet on one of them, and also figure out, once you take a bet, how do you start to plan your exit? How do you start to plan the closing phase? The most common reactions I get around betting, around the betting strategy is two things. I'll either be early, but I'm going to diversify across all the platforms until a winner emerges. Everybody thinks they're super smart by taking this bet. Or the other end of the spectrum is I'm going to wait to dedicate any resources until the winner is clear. These are both losing strategies every single time, especially if you are a startup. They do not work. If you are a startup, you do not have the resources to diversify effectively and participate in a fast, new-moving distribution channel. And if you wait too long, then the entire arbitrage, that GTM alpha, right, that Clay loves to talk about, it's gone. So, all right. Fareed Mostafat, who I do a podcast with, kind of pointed this out with a couple past shifts. He talked a little bit about Apple and Android, and he pointed out, right, that actually, if you just took a bet on Apple only and did not develop for the other platforms, you could be a winner. But if you took a bet on Android or Windows Phone or the other things, it was a complete waste of time. It was the same thing in the Facebook platform shift as well. People who tried to diversify all of their bets across all of the different platforms, it did not matter. It actually ended up being that if you just took a bet on Facebook, that was the winning move. None of the other platforms ended up mattering in the long term. So choosing right, choosing correctly actually has a really big outcome. So there's 4 criteria when I think about evaluating and that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at these platforms as new data emerges. The first is, of course, scale. It has to have a large enough user base to be really interesting to you. But as I mentioned, most of the winners, the long-term winners, end up not being the largest players. Scale is necessary, but not sufficient. The thing that you really need on these platforms, and you got to evaluate, is how is your audience, how are your users, how are they retaining and engaging on the platform? The deeper the retention, the deeper the engagement, that's going to influence more how you participate in the channel. It could have 1 billion users, but if they're lightly using the platform, then that is not like that light engagement is going to translate to deep engagement on your platform. The platform needs to have deep engagement on it for it to translate to deep engagement and interestingness for you. The third is user quality. Different platforms have different monetization potential. This was most clear in the Apple Android, still is, right? Apple only owns about 30% of the devices out there, but I believe about 70% of mobile dollars. But this was also true in all of the other shifts, right? In the Facebook and the social shift, Facebook didn't have the largest players, but their users always monetized at 2, 3, 4x better rates than MySpace or all of the other social platforms. And the fourth is, what is the value exchange? So the rules for this game, this distribution shift, have not been completely written yet. The platform hasn't launched on ChatGPT or any of these other things. And even though when they do launch it, right, the rules will be constantly rewritten and change over time. But there will be a set of rules, and you need to understand what those rules are and what the value exchange is. There will be some value exchange of, hey, come develop and build on my platform, right? And in exchange, I'm going to give you something, typically in the form of some type of distribution, maybe in the form of data, context, things to help make your product better, but you need to be able to evaluate those things. Those are the 4 things that you have to evaluate when choosing a platform to understand and decide what is the right one for you to take a bet on and when to take a bet on it, depending on your audience and product. These 4 things. But once you enter the game, you then need to immediately shift to, okay, now that I'm like riding this wave, how am I going to exit gracefully? Because I know the 3rd stage of this cycle will come at some point and close for monetization. So you have to invest in one of these things. One of these things has to be your hypothesis, right? Which is, 1, I'm going to build a deeper, more specific workflow to my use case that the users can't do on one of those platforms. They have to come to my product to do it. Or 2, I'm accumulating specialized context or data that makes the output of my product, my AI product, much better than and irreplaceable than if they were trying to just do it on one of these generic horizontal platforms. You have to invest in one of these things in order to build a defensible position over time. All right. So depending on where you're at, where your company is at. Some of you in the room are probably early stage startups, and some of you are incumbents. I've been mostly talking about this from the startup perspective, but how you play the game really kind of differs a little bit depending on where you're at. Startups, you have to pick your platform bet and commit fully, right? There are no half measures, otherwise it's just going to lead to irrelevance. 2, you have to enter with an exit strategy and build that independent defensibility by leveraging all of these resources. And 3, you have to move fast. This innovation cycle and the replication of it is unbelievably brutal. If you're an incumbent, you can play by slightly different rules, but I would caution, right? Don't underestimate the startups in the left-hand category. They are going to move very fast, and the ones that make big, bold bets are going to get outsized returns and can take you by surprise. 2 is you got to focus on the user experience and workflow integration that you already have, not just feature parity. And 3, you have the advantage to build your own platform relationships because you're already bigger that the startups can't do. So depending on where you're at and who you are, you can play this game slightly differently. But once again, you have to play the game. There is no opting out. Now look, Reforge, we've been around for about 10 years. We've seen so many of these transformations. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, which is brutal to say. We've worked with some of the most amazing teams on this stuff. So look, if you want to learn deeper on this, please come to Reforge. I'm also happy to answer questions on LinkedIn. You can also check out our products that are helping teams navigate this shift. by aggregating and analyzing your feedback, helping you prototype solutions and launch a bunch of new features quickly. Last thing I want to say is prior to Reforge, I was at HubSpot. I will have to say this conference, this product, this community is giving me vibes of really early HubSpot. I think we're in the middle of seeing a new iconic company in the making. Congrats to Varun and team, and thank you for having me. Appreciate it all.